All right, today we're here in Tallahassee with the famous F. Lewis Jones, and we're going to have a little discussion. So, Lewis, tell us how you first became involved in music.
Well, we lived in the country outside of Thomasville, Georgia, and about the only things I heard in music or involved was singing in a church choir, and listening to the Grand Ole Opry out. We had an old battery operated
Radio?
well, no, it was just an audio, radio, yeah.
Yeah, radio.
And so, that's the only thing I remember hearing anything about until I was about 12 years old.
Uh-huh.
And after we moved into town,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a sister, younger sister, who was just 5 years older than me, and she just out of clear blue asked me if I wanted to get into the band. There, and we had to have you had to pay $1 a month to rent an instrument and $1 a month to get a lesson.
Wow.
And that was with the band director.
Mm-hmm.
And he wasn't much. But anyway, I went to see him about getting in the band, and this was like in January, in the middle of the year. And he wasn't too happy to see me at that time of the year anyway. But he asked me what I wanted to play, and I told him that I didn't have any idea.
Mm-hmm.
So he went into the instrument room, and he came out with a French horn.
Huh.
And I didn't know any better. And then but when he came out, the string was broken on the French horn, and it was inoperative.
Mm-hmm.
So he got a cornet instead,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how I got started. And he asked me if I knew anything about the bugle call taps.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, yeah, I can hear it, I can sing it. And so he handed me the thing, showed me how to buzz my lip, and told me, said, well, here, take this horn, and when you push your first and third finger down, and when you learn to play taps, come back. So I went home and worked on it, and I was back the next day.
Wow.
It's surprising. Then he comes out with an old beat up Arbon's book, in the front part of Arbon's book, you got all the fingerings and that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So he says, you take this page, and when you learn all that page, come back.
Mm-hmm.
So I was back in there the next day.
Wow.
Again. And I tell you, I just fell in love with that horn,
Mm-hmm.
Nobody ever had to ask me about practicing, because I just loved playing with it, Anyway, so that was the start of my career, and within two months, he put me in the band,
Mm-hmm.
the advanced band. I didn't know what I was doing, but I was able to play in my sister's graduation band.
Wow.
In that June,
Huh.
And so
Now that was at Thomasville High School?
yeah.
Wow.
And it was the band director was like a string teacher. He didn't know much about trumpet,
Mm-hmm.
but I learned, and I just fell in love with the horn.
Mm-hmm.
And
So what got you interested in becoming a band director? When did you decide to be a band director?
I didn't even think about that possibility. during all this time. But later, when I graduated from high school, I joined the Army
Mm-hmm.
and played trumpet in an Army band
Mm-hmm.
at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. And I came home. My mother and my sister lived in had moved to Tallahassee by that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I came home on leave one time, and I was driving my sister's car just around town, and I heard this band playing, and I went pulled around there by the old marching chief's rehearsal field, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard that sound from that band, man, I knew I had to be a part of it. And so I started making arrangements to do that. And when I got out of the Army, I went to FSU,
Mm-hmm.
and I started playing there. And I guess maybe about halfway through my freshman year, I decided that this was where I wanted to go. This is what I wanted to be a part of for the rest of my life. So I did. And that's when I decided to be a band director. And then when I did my internship with Jeff Bradford over at Raw Junior High at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so in 1960, I interned with him, and which led to my first job.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff had been band director several years earlier at Greensboro, Florida.
Right.
Greensboro High School actually was a 1 through 12 school.
Right. I remember that.
And so when I was interning, Jeff asked me about halfway through my internship if I had a job, and I said, well, I got a couple of applications in, and but I haven't heard anything. So he said, well, I'm going to come by and pick you up this evening. So he came by and picked me up at home, and we started headed west, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't figure out where in the hell we were going. So he just kept going, you know, and it kept getting thinner and thinner with houses. And so he pulls up to the principal's house. This was about 8 o'clock at night in the middle. And he pulled up to the principal's house, and he takes me up, and we go up on the front porch, and he knocks on the door. And he knew that there was an opening there at Greensboro High School.
Ah.
The guy that they they just ran off, because he hadn't even been to a district festival for 3 years.
Hmm.
He'd been there all that time. So we go up, and he knocks on the door, and the principal comes to the door, and Jeff says, "Hi, Tate, how in the world are you doing?" That's Tate's, it was his first name.
Mm-hmm.
He says, I'm doing fine," and he turns to me and he said, "Oh, here's your band director." That was it.
You didn't even have to interview.
No. Well, I did meet the principal later, and it turned out he interviewed me instead of vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And to see if it thought I might fit in there, and we did, and I took that job. We had the biggest band I ever had there was 35-piece band, and
Mm-hmm.
22 of them were middle school or junior high.
Right.
And so I started on a summer program. That summer, Carol and I moved over to Greensboro, and she was shocked because she was from Columbia, South Carolina, you know, bigger town.
Right.
And she didn't know whether she was going to survive in Greensboro, and I didn't either. And we already had 2 kids at that point, and
How long did you stay there at Greensboro?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Wow. There were quite a few band directors came through there as they started their careers there.
Yeah, well, Jeff was one of them.
Yeah, you and Jeff and
Bob
Bob Fritz.
Yeah, Bob Fritz did a great job there.
Yeah.
But that first year, I think there's another question in here that I think I can answer at the same time. One of the things I learned with Jeff was if you don't, you know, if you can't get kids to play with a characteristic sound, you're not going to be successful.
Right.
And so that's the first thing I jumped in on when I went to Greensboro. And, you know, by the end of the first year, they were sounding pretty good. And I'll never forget, we had a spring concert, and when I came out on the stage, I looked up in the audience, and there sat Oliver Hobbs and Jeff Bradford sitting out there and listening to me.
Wow. That's intimidating.
I tell you, I was about almost panicked. But they began to sound pretty good, and we had marching then, you know, and we didn't have a football team or anything. So we had to do our marching whenever I could get around to it, you know. And so we started in on that, and so the very first, this was on my first year there, you know, we went to the district festival and made straight superiors.
Wow.
And went to the marching festival, and the marching festival was just about like a state festival at that time. They would have, you know, your normal 3 judges,
Right.
with the concert band, and then they hired people to do the marching, and we had, I've forgotten who the 3 marching judges were. There was 4 of them, and they were tough. So we made, when we went to that, but it was like a state marching festival or contest.
They had inspection then too, didn't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the whole 9 yards. And so we made straight 2s and a couple of 3s, I think, with the marching. And I was happy to get that, really, because I'd never done it before.
Right.
I'd never really planned a marching festival at that, marching show at that time. I don't know how I got by at FSU without doing that. I guess they just assumed that when you went to intern, you were supposed to be finding out how to do stuff like that, you know.
Right. Right.
And of course, Jeff had the same marching type of thing as Oliver did, you know. They just had, well, Oliver had big bands, you know, and they'd go out on, they'd make one entrance onto the fields, stop and turn to the audience and do some little dance step type of thing, or some really hard piece of music, and then march off the other end, and that was it. Well, I had learned enough by being in the marching chiefs to march 8 to 5 instead of just march. And so I put together a little show. I don't remember what it was now, but we made that rating. But then, well, we made a one at the district marching festival, but that qualified us for state, which I was sorry to see. So anyway, we didn't do very well. But then the next year, we made straight ones at district, and made straight ones at state.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
But it wasn't no one straight ones. It was 2 1s and a 2. And guess who gave me the 2?
I don't know.
Whitcomb.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he apologized to me almost later because he just, I think he felt like since he knew me that he couldn't, you know, he was afraid he was going to be the only one giving me a 1.
Ah.
So that's what we did, and what that was. And you're talking about selling me on being a band director. When we got back we went to Daytona Beach.
Ah.
It was where the state festival was. And so we made a 1 at state. And so when we came back, we were riding doggone, as Oliver used to call them, yellow greyhounds, as school buses.
Right.
I mean, you can think of us bumping along all the way from Greensboro to Daytona Beach, you know, on those buses. So when we got back, coming back, I was following the bus. I had my car, which I followed the bus in case we had some kind of emergency. So when we came through Tallahassee, we were coming through, let's see, Tennessee Street, and that we got out here to Ocala Road, and there was a parking lot. There was a big parking lot off over there near where there's a drugstore and a bowling alley.
Right.
And so we got right up by there, and the Tallahassee police pulled my buses off, pulled into that parking lot, and I said, "Oh God, what have they done?" Because when we went down there, when we took the bus down there, we used one of our school buses at the school, and I had several grandparents that will drive the buses for us, so we had a choice, and they'd get just a few miles out of Greensboro, and then they pulled the buses over and took all the gardeners off of them. They knew how to do that. So, because they wouldn't go 45 miles an hour, you know. So when we got back, the police pulled them in there, and I came in, and they said, we're gonna lead you out of town. So we had a police escort all the way back to Greensboro.
Wow.
And when we got to Greensboro, the gym was all decorated up, and they had like a covered dish dinner, you know, for the whole town showed up.
That's great.
Yeah, well, I'm telling you, I was king for a day there, you know. It was really neat, and I had time. I remember comparing that with when years after, when I got to Leon, we'd come back from state festival, you know, with the straight ones and all that, and all we'd have was some parents complaining because we were late getting back to. In fact, some guy, we were unloading the bus, you know, and getting back into the band room, and some band parents says he was in a hurry, had to go somewhere, and he was blocked in at that time, and he came to me, and the bus driver was standing there, and he comes up and says, I've got to get out of here. So pull that bus out of the way so we can get through. And the bus driver says, well, I can't right now. We're blocked in here. And he says, if you don't move that bus, I'm going to ram it. He had a big old Cadillac. And the bus driver says, how about it, buddy? I don't care. It ain't my bus. So,
now, where did you go when you left Greensboro?
I went to Mobile.
Mobile?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Lacey Powell was one of the judges at that district festival. Mm-hmm. And it was in the gym at Port St. Joe.
Wow.
And a little sidelight, that's when Oliver was playing, the Leon band mm-hmm. was playing the first movement to the Giannini, mm-hmm. and during trombone section, wasn't counting, wasn't paying attention, and they came in the wrong place, and it was a big mess, and so Oliver just cuts the band off in the middle of the piece. Mm-hmm. Has the oboe player over on the right stand up, and he sat down there in the chair for and it was dead quiet in there, man. And nobody was saying anybody, nobody was playing, nobody was doing anything. And he went over and sat down in that chair, and just waited. Everything's quiet. So finally, his face gets red enough, mm-hmm. so he stands up and starts over from the beginning. Mm-hmm. And man, they wouldn't have missed that entrance again the rest of their life. So, and we played there, and Lacey was the judge. And when I got home, this was a district festival. When I got home, I had a call from Lacey, mm-hmm. and says, are you looking for a job? And I said, no. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I've got a AA school over here that needs a band director. Mm. And I said, okay. He was supervisor of music in
right.
Mobile County.
Right.
And so Lee Jeffers was one of the band directors over there, and I knew him. And so he had me and Carol come over, and Lee and his wife were out of town, and they let us use their house to spend the night, you know, after he got over. So he said this AA high school, you know, they had like 2,000 students in grades 10 through 12.
Wow.
And it was awful. Mm. I mean, there was not anybody in that band that really cared about playing music. Mm-hmm. They were mainly in there so they could make travels to football games and other mm-hmm. stuff. Mm-hmm. And they were awful. And Lacey had not mentioned that. But anyway, Carol and I went over and again, Lacey had already had already paved the way, and I didn't have to interview there either.
Wow.
Except the principal, you know, principal asking me questions about what I had in mind. And he was a good principal. He did everything he could to help me out. And the first home football game we had, I knew I was in trouble because this band was lousy. And so the first band I ran up against was the Robert E. Lee high school band from Montgomery. John Long was the band director. And they had about a 120-piece band, and they like this, you know. It was impressive. And I think I went on first, or we went on first, and I had some dinky little show, and I just about went behind the stadium and cried after they came on, which was kind of an amazing thing.
Now, how long did you stay there?
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah, it was a really good job because they had the Mobile Symphony, you know. It was
yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so I got auditioned and got into the Mobile Symphony.
Wow.
And played principal trumpet.
That's great. I never knew that.
Well, I loved it, and I was in the musicians union over there because you had to be, and I picked up a lot of playing gigs the whole time I was there. You know, I was playing trumpet in the symphony, and then a lot of shows came through town because I was in the union. I get those, and played in an opera orchestra and under some good conductors, and just about all the band directors over there were in the symphony. So that was, we developed a lot of close friends that way, and most of them were married, and Carol got to know their wives and that kind of, so it was a good gig, but dang band. So what I decided to do, because we're just going to live with the juniors and seniors until they graduated.
Right.
And it worked out all right. I had to. There were no girls in the band.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because the parents wouldn't let them be there, because all the boys were such jerks. And all they was interested in is making the trips with the band, and trying to make out what all the girls were. And the parents wouldn't stand for that. So it was 10, 11, 12, and I focused on the 10th graders and started teaching them the characteristic sound and all the good things that they needed to know.
Right.
And those kids became some of my best friends over there, because the next year, first year I was there, we didn't even get out of district. The way they did the judging there in Alabama was you had to be recommended for state. They didn't give any ratings or anything at district.
Right.
They just either recommended you or didn't. And we had a guy was band director at University of Alabama, Butler.
Oh, yeah.
Colonel Butler.
Colonel Butler, yeah.
And I can sit here and tell you ABA crap all afternoon. They had the strangest way of doing things over and I was trying to make some changes, you know,
Mm-hmm.
to try to get it more in line with what we did in Florida. And so I made it the second year I was there. We made it through district and made a one at state. Never had one before in the history of the school.
Wow.
Same thing, same way with Greensboro. So that worked out pretty good. And I got a chance to meet a whole bunch of band directors there.
Mm-hmm.
And some of them were, I better not tread on that.
Yeah, you better not go there.
That's what,
So how did you wind up at Leon?
uh,
How did Oliver ask you to come there?
okay, at District Festival, at District Festival, we had Oliver as a judge.
Oh, okay.
And we, as part of the all-state selection, they had I'm trying to think of the best way to put that. Each district was allotted a certain number of people
Right.
to go into the all-state band, and
Right.
they actually had three levels: the red, white, and blue.
Right.
And so they would actually, the kids were assigned a whole bunch of exercises out of major, like with Arvin's book, you know, and Weisenborn book for bassoon, and clarinet plays, close save book.
Mm-hmm.
And so we, in Mobile, we were blessed. Most all the high school bands were blessed with some really good clarinet players.
Mm.
And so every year we would leave clarinet players behind that could beat anybody in the bands that they selected.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what gave me the idea for later on, you know, the way we did for the audition system we developed for the
Mm-hmm.
I was just saying, you remember, I think, the how we did that.
Right.
They locked me and you and Bill Higgins in a room and said, "Don't come out until you got something." And we came up with that system. Of course, you ran that for how many years?
A number of years, yeah.
Yeah, no. But anyway, it turned out well, and it's still a good system.
It is. It works for
And
one.
nobody else runs
No.
anything like that.
So anyway, tell us how you got to Leon.
Oh, well, that second year when I was there, Oliver was one of the judges,
Mm-hmm.
and so he sent me word and said, "Come see me at the end of the festival." So I went up to see him, and at that point, he was getting ready to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, Jeff had been doing the elementary program here in Tallahassee.
Mm-hmm.
And then he walked out on the teacher walkout that they had.
Mm-hmm.
And out of that, he ended up at Godby.
Right.
And so when I talked to Oliver, he practically offered me the job at Leon right there.
Hmm.
And he said, well, I don't know how much you know about Oliver. You couldn't pin his butt down if you had to. I mean, he's always left another avenue over here.
Mm-hmm.
And so he offered me the elementary job over here.
Oh.
And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and I went home and talked to Carol, and I decided not to take it. And I mean, I told him, how honored I was to even consider me for that, but that I felt two things. One, I wasn't sure I could handle elementary kids,
Mm-hmm.
because but anyway, so the hardest phone call I had to make was to call him up and say I was going to turn it down.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, I told Carol, I said, well, I may have just, screwed up royally. And so I thought, well, and he was kind of halfway promised that he would, when he retired, I could have the band.
Wow.
And that was awfully wonderful. I mean, it was just wonderful that he would even consider me. But see, he watched me all my whole career.
Right.
And he personally got me into FBA.
Right.
A charter member as a young,
Right.
been teaching 6 years at that point, 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't. So anyway, I turned it down, and I thought, well, that's your career, buddy. So I was district chairman over in Mobile, and as part of the auditions that they had for all state, they would bring in a group and play a concert.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would do clinic type things for the kids,
Mm-hmm.
the ones who tried out.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, like I said, my second year over there, I was district chairman.
Wow.
With all that stuff that went on. So I got the Southern Mississippi Band to come over and do the clinic, do the concert in the clinic.
Wow.
In the second year. In the third year, I got Oliver to bring the Leon Band over. I never will forget, they played can't think of the piece of music now. Anyway, it was one that everybody knows. And they did a great job with the thing. And so he came back that same year to judge the district over there.
Mm-hmm.
And this time, when he called me, he said that he was going to retire
Mm-hmm.
next year, and that he could get me on as his assistant for a year,
Mm-hmm.
and then take over the band.
Right.
And that's what we did.
Yeah.
Same thing. No interview. He handled it all.
Mm-hmm.
So I was scared to death.
Now, how long were you at Leon?
12 years.
12 years.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't remember it being that long.
Yeah, it's from 66 to 78
Mm-hmm.
through 78.
And then you went into church work for a little while, right?
Yeah, for one year.
1 year.
Yeah, they hired me as choir director, church administrator,
Mm-hmm.
treasurer. I mean,
Right.
at a significantly reduced rate in salary. But, you know, we had our, Carol and I had our third child by that time.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, Carrie, who's in town right now, was he was working on going into church work. He had gotten mixed up with the damn Baptists. Well, First Baptist was there, and there was a whole bunch of college age kids in that choir they had there.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew a whole bunch of the people, and he had, by that time we had moved out into the Lincoln zone,
Oh yeah.
and he started out playing sax, alto sax at Rickards. And anyway, he ended up going to getting his degree from Rickards.
Mm-hmm.
That first district festival,
At Leon.
yeah, man, oh man, that was, and of course I was the assistant
Mm-hmm.
at Oliver's last district festival.
Right.
That's when we had all the required pieces, you know.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so that was a bad year for 1966,
Mm-hmm.
because the pieces they selected the music committee selected were pretty poor. One was that Charlie Carter attempt at serious
Mm-hmm.
stuff, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it was all right, but Oliver couldn't stand it, and neither could I, and so he had to choose. For his last thing was
Collis Bunyan.
no, that was mine.
That was yours.
It was Giovannini.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Overture in G or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bad piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to, you know, after we turn that off, I want to tell you a couple of things about Oliver.
Okay, well let's stay on you though.
What's that?
So then you were hired to become the FBA executive director.
Yeah,
And how long did you do that?
17 years.
17 years. Wow.
Yeah, I know.
That was a long time.
Well, it was. But you know, I really enjoyed that. We were able to make a lot of changes, and introducing the computers
Right.
into the business.
Right.
And I didn't know that much about computers myself,
Mm-hmm.
but I started learning how, and I ran across that kid from down in who's district chairman down in gosh, I can't, Central Florida somewhere. Oh, what was the guy's name? That Mark Gruel
Oh
was
yeah.
the one that I contacted that
Well, it doesn't matter.
anyway, I got introduced to computers, and Mike LeClaire was kind of the ramrod there.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so they paid $7,500 for that first computer.
Is that right?
Yeah, and it was a Commodore PET. Had, man, it was hot shot thing. Had two discs, dual disc,
Right.
64K each,
Yeah.
and the thing wouldn't function like I needed it. So the Mark helped me out with that a lot. He could do the program that needed to be done. He graduated from high school and moved here to school at FSU. He'd come out to my house, and I had the computer there, and he would sit there and ask me what I needed to do, and then he could do programming and BASIC, and so he would write the program that would do what I needed to do.
Oh yeah.
And we ended up with what they have now over a period of time. That was when we started being able to schedule. All right.
Well, you made a lot of improvements in the way the FBA run. We have to wrap this up. So, you have any words of wisdom for young band directors nowadays?
You know, the key to success of what I did was what I started doing when I first went to Greensboro. Whatever I needed, whatever I had to do to get kids individually to play with decent tone quality.
Right.